Hello, all. I wanted to share some reflections on the collective breakdown of relationships. So, there's a collective breakdown or shift, if you will, that's been happening over the past decade or so, that really is part of a larger pattern that started way before that. It's happening on every level of relationship. And I wanted to speak to it because I'm seeing a lot of individual perspectives of this experience being expressed. And I wanted to offer an overarching perspective just to add to that. Generally speaking, the dating dynamics between men and women are shifting greatly. There's also this shift in the nuclear family, which is a term defined in previous decades and eras as established from God Himself as the proper structure for family. FYI, I no longer refer to God as a He. There's a shift in family dynamics where men and women are no longer sticking strictly to gender roles. We know this. Women are working, men are staying home. There's also a shift in many families, breaks within families, oppositions over political, social, and theological differences. I'm seeing separations from parents and their grown children for various reasons, including a trend in those who identify as LGBTQ plus breaking away from families due to lack of acceptance, etc. And, from the perspective of a young man or older men seeking to date, to marry, they are experiencing a very different dating pool than previous generations where what used to work doesn't now, where simply being a man doesn't entitle them to a woman. And some of the extreme experiences of rejections are leaving many men feeling victimized by women, the women they desire, but have not been successful in procuring. And from the perspective of many women, they are more independent, capable, and successful than previous generations allowed them to be. But those who have married, the majority, find themselves stretched more thinly than ever, often taking on both earning and domestic responsibilities. And many are finding the relationship dynamics of previous generations unsupportive and unsustainable for them in their modern life. Some are not able to find a suitable partner, and many are choosing to stay single. In all of these dynamics, there can also be a sense of victimization, feeling from a lack of support that women are feeling, generally speaking, today. There are mass percentages of young people who are opting out of traditional marriage, out of having children for varied reasons. Some of them financial, lack of social support for families, and an increased awareness of the dynamics of trauma handed down through childhood that are all contributors to these decisions. There's also a general increase in awareness and sensitivity in children and young adults today, generally speaking. Many are seeing gaping holes, inconsistencies, and injustices within the religious structures and institutions, and even expressed also in the political and socio-economical institutions. Many are questioning long-standing beliefs and faith practices that previous generations were indoctrinated into through social and family pressures. Generally speaking, these younger folks are feeling somewhat victimized by the world left for them to inherit. And, can't argue that, really. One where the slave system that they were born into is painfully evident, where the basics of life are increasingly difficult to procure, and the general rape, colonization, domination, and consumerism perspectives of the world and its resources are really a hard pill for this generation to swallow, indeed. In addition, we're seeing the underbelly of traditional Christian systems, not just Christian, but even in other spiritual lineages, guru systems, exposing dynamics of toxic purity culture, increasing number of leaders involved in scandals, whether those are financial or sexual in nature, and a general split in family dynamics over the issue of same-sex attraction, rights, and gay marriage. Parents of gay children who are choosing theology over biology, meaning their own connection to their own children. Many of these parents feel victimized by a society that they blame for its influences, and gay children feeling victimized, rightfully so, by rejection from what should be an unconditional source of love from their parents. I can see the vantage point on every side, and every side is indeed experiencing its own victimization. And on some level, no side is wrong or inaccurate when viewed from that perspective. But within the many themes, individual themes that are playing out, there's an overarching theme at work. And that is the shift that's taking place between the masculine and the feminine. All form is expressed through these two polarities beyond gender, and they serve as archetypes for us to understand ourselves from. It's now common discussion that our society is shifting from the predominantly patriarchal orientation that it has been in for the past several thousand years into something new. Every new generation inherits collective unconscious, unresolved wounds from the past and does the best they can to move the collective forward into greater freedom and healing. This is the evolution of consciousness. The very essence of patriarchy at its core is a repression of the feminine. And just so we're clear, every human being has both inner masculine and inner feminine energy. The ancient Taoists and Eastern spiritual systems of the world have documented and expressed these esoteric understandings that have been largely ignored by Western philosophy and religion. So the shift that is currently taking place within humanity, which is shifting out of an overvalued and accentuated masculine orientation and a repressed and undervalued feminine orientation. And this can be seen as a cosmic shift to restore balance to human relationships. And because we each possess inner masculine and inner feminine traits, qualities, characteristics, and energies, this relational shift is happening literally from the inside out within every human being. The basis of this shift is that it's helping humanity to become aware of its victimizations and to address collective codependency. All of the relationship dynamics I spoke of previously are rooted in these two patterns of victimization and codependency. And the shifts in these dynamics are life's way of trying to restore balance. So the first stage is to acknowledge our own victimization, whether perceived or actual. It doesn't matter. The experience to the person is the same. And until we honor and respect and allow for every individual experience, not allowing it to encroach upon us personally, but allowing that individual to speak out their experience and to be witnessed and acknowledged in that, is essential to us evolving as a species. You know, we all feel slighted or shortchanged by life in some way, and many have experienced outright violence, abuse, violation, and all of that. None of that is okay, ever. But healing begins with first acknowledging your own experiences of suffering, and then realizing that those who have perpetrated those acts of violence towards you have themselves also experienced that which has created the separation necessary for them to be able to perpetuate violence onto another. You know, there's a teaching that I heard once from this lady whose brand is called Oracle Girl. And she has a healing transmission about healing abuse. And it's really addressing this pattern of codependency. And in that, she makes a statement that the victim and the perpetrator, it's the same energy. And that takes a lot to sit with, to digest and integrate that truth. What that means is that victimization starts within. There has to be some, even if it's completely unconscious, there has to be some of that external perpetrator within you that's turned on yourself in order for that external to even be there. You know, at the root of relationships in previous generations was codependency. Men, thousands of years ago, created a society that subjugated women under their control, largely out of fear of the power of feminine magnetism, which that's a whole different discussion we're not going to get into today. They created whole systems of society to keep the power of feminine attributes and sexuality subjugated to the control of men. This manifested distortion, resentments, and victimization of the feminine, which was then unconsciously passed down to sons and daughters, each responding according to their socialized genders, all the way to present day. Plainly put, whether we're aware of it or not, we all have inherited this unconscious fear of our own inner feminine, which includes our feeling nature, our intuition, our connection to the spiritual realms and the divine. And we've all inherited an unconscious aspect of our masculine that has been socialized to control, dominate, consume, and subjugate the feminine. These dynamics or archetypes exist within our psyche, and they're expressed in our personalities in a myriad of ways. The feminine archetypically represents unlimited, unbridled chaos, energy, creation power, creativity. Also represents our emotional nature, our felt sense, our intuition, our self-knowing, and our psychic connection to the cosmos. She represents the receptive magnetic pole, or the state of being. And the masculine, archetypically, represents focus, logic, action, thinking, the realm of the mind and the intellect. He represents the reactive electric pole, or the state of doing. These are just some of the words that are associated with these archetypes. So when we reflect on the repressed feminine within the collective, we can see these themes emerging on our world stage. Women over the past 50 years have moved more and more into their masculine energy to reclaim that part of themselves, pursuing careers outside the home, managing money, being financially independent, relationally independent, reclaiming their own repressed expressions of their masculine orientation. And we're also seeing men in the past maybe 20 years reclaiming some of their inner feminine through greater understanding and development of their relationship to their own emotions, becoming more aware of how their actions affect those around them, and more are seeking healing for their own traumas and becoming trauma aware. So for those who closely identify with the ways and beliefs of the past, and one of those categories of people would be evangelical Christians, although not limited, certainly. All of these changes that I've just gone through can be perceived through the lens of a threat to their religious morality and or a threat to national identity. For those who are seeking freedom from these past constraints and are seeking new dynamics in relating to life and self and others, there can still be a projection of victimhood onto the opposite pole of the perspective. But what's important to understand is every judgment is really self-judgment. And every victimization externally represents an internal struggle that is largely unconscious. Now, this is not addressing physical violence and abuse. That's a different discussion. You know you are becoming more self-aware when you understand that external patterns in the world are mirrors of our internal landscape. So in order to change that within the world that we wish to change, we must first address those conflicts, patterns, beliefs, and energies within ourselves. It's important to understand that there's nothing quote unquote wrong with the past or even with what is playing out today. I am a believer in the idea that whatever we call God, Source, Creator, Creatrix, Great Spirit, that there is an intelligent design at work, and that life is unfolding according to a cosmic script in which we all are co-authors, and we are the personalities, the actors in this great play of life. You know, there's a spiritual perspective that says it's not what you experience, but how you perceive those experiences that determines the quality of your life. And I can attest in my own spiritual, mental, emotional healing journey, the more I've opened up to these perspectives and put them to the test within myself, the more I feel that is true for me. My circumstances did not shift until my attitude and perception about my experiences shifted, which only shifted through acknowledgement, sobriety of the problem, reaching out to a higher power, asking for help and support in those areas, and then receiving that support and seeing change actually happen. You know, drastic change that we ourselves do not initiate feels threatening and even like potential death to our psyche. So it's absolutely natural that everyone feels crazy right now and everyone is losing their shit, generally speaking. But if you understand what is happening and you have a vision for where it's all going, then surrendering to the higher power / design of life that is unfolding can feel safe even in the midst of great suffering and great chaos. And I'd like to add a caveat here. Surrendering to the design of life doesn't just mean acceptance of your specific theological or philosophical beliefs. I believe many spiritual systems would like to cherry pick and say these experiences are what God intended, and these other experiences are not what God intended. And that leads to a perspective of life that induces suffering, because the orientation to life is the belief that when we're having the experiences we desire to have, we are somehow in favor with God. And when we are having experiences that we prefer not to have, that somehow we're out of favor with God. And that is a reward-punishment paradigm that is not actually the highest spiritual view possible. And I'll pin that and let you chew on that for your own contemplation. So where's it all going then? This drastic change that we're all undergoing collectively right now. Where are we going? Heaven on earth. This is where we're headed. Whether that means to you world peace, a love and acceptance between all humans and species, alleviating sickness and maybe even overcoming death itself. It may mean collective equality and collaboration, replacing intense competition and consumption models of living. It may mean caring for the earth's body and our own bodies as if they were temples of God. They are. Whatever that phrase means to you, heaven on earth, outside of your projections of control, punishment, and fear onto any other being, this is where we are all headed. If you understand arcs of time from a much longer perspective, collective consciousness is on a journey of evolution. And that journey has included ages of time where humanity chose to move deeper into separation consciousness and suffering in order that it might explore and test its own invincible divine nature. And that discovery process is unfolding now as we are purging our collective unconscious trauma, suffering, repressed emotions, victimization, war, rape consciousness, etc. The chaos is the purging. The purging is a stage in the process of reclaiming and returning to our original divine nature. That divine nature expressed in various human beings like Jesus or Buddha that we have deified as separate from ourselves. They were the way showers, and now we are those way showers. There is a time and a season for all things. Now is the time for separation consciousness, what the Bible calls the veil, to fall out of the minds and hearts of humanity, and for us to return to the remembrance of unity with all things through the reclamation of our sovereignty. Everything we fear outside of us is a message pinging our awareness of how we have subjugated ourselves, quote, our inner feminine, to an external authoritarian power, quote, our inner masculine, and how we project our control, victimization, and codependency outwards onto characters in this world around us. And aside from those who are in active war zones, who are suffering as victims of trafficking and rape, domestic abuse, etc. The rest of us, our experiences of victimization are the clarion call to return to our own sovereign power and authority. This does not mean that we are subject to no law or requirement, but rather that we are subject only to the law of one, which is the core message of every religion, by the way, do unto others. And we are subject to our own conscience and relationship to the divine, whatever that is for us individually. Because we do not need religion to tell us what is right. Our inner feminine knows exactly what is right relationally between us, between the world, between interrelationally, between interspecies, and in our own connection to the God consciousness or Christ consciousness within us. This is why all external change begins within, because we must recalibrate ourselves within to the connection to our hearts. We must realign our minds to be in partnership with and in service to our hearts. In fact, the two are soulmates and are meant to come together in ecstatic union within us. And the prayer that is praying us will change us from the inside out. This does not mean that we do not take action in the world or stand for injustice. Each must do as they are compelled to do, and in whatever season of life they are in. But collectively, we must understand the laws of the universe and how energy or spirit affects matter, how matter comes into being, and how consciousness is the guide for it all.